Welcome to Horbury in West Yorkshire, a little town with a lot of history. The map on the wall in Queen Street here represents the first batch of QR codes produced by Horbury Civic Society in conjunction with Wakefield Council. So what is a QR code? Well, if you have a smartphone, you can use it to zap the little squares that you'll find on the plaques. You might need to download a QR code reader on some phones though. On some of the plaques you'll find a link to more information at horburyhistory.org. Don't worry though if you don't have a smartphone, because all the information is available at the Civic Society website. So let's have a wander then around the QR code trail. Where I'm standing in Queen Street used to be a run of very old shops, but they were demolished long ago, and for many years this was a car park. This area over here is now Stanbarstow Garden, but it used to be a collection of 4 little cottages known as Harrop's Yard, named after Benjamin Harrop, who had a draper's shop here. The shop at the other side was for many years the twopenny shop. Notice the old date stone up there. But it used to be Amos Batty's picture framers, and Amos Batty was one of the founders of the Mount Zion Chapel at the top of Northgate. The properties here were built by Horbury Industrial Cooperative Society in 1869. The top one, bar 59, used to be the Horbury Co-op Furnishing Department. But it was built in front of the old United Free Methodist Chapel, which dated from 1857. The chapel moved to the bottom of Bank Street in 1899. For many years this was Walker's Butchers, but it was the Ring of Bells pub. This little building next door used to be 2 stories, but the top story was destroyed by fire from the fish and chip shop next door. This building is over 300 years old and is timber framed with walls over 3 feet thick. The Victorian post office across the road replaced an earlier one at the top of Cluntergate. Standing proudly at the top of the hill is the magnificent church of St Peter and St Leonard. This church actually replaced an earlier Norman chapel. Completed in 1794, this church was designed by Horbury-born architect John Carr, who paid £8,000 for its construction out of his own pocket. He also spent £2,000 on bells for the tower, which were eventually removed and melted down to cast new bells in 2018. The new bells were installed in the tower after a blessing ceremony on Easter Sunday 2019. John Carr and other members of his family are buried in the crypt, which can be visited on special open days. The longest serving vicar of St Peter's was Canon John Sharp, who was vicar of Horbury from 1834 to 1899. That's just under 65 years. He was also largely responsible for the original St Peter's School, the House of Mercy, St Leonard's Hospital, and securing a Yorkshire penny bank in the town so that the poor could save for the day of rest. At the junction of Tide Barn Street and Northgate is this former shop building. It's suggested that this was the site of Horbury's first co-op in 1866. This building, along with many other Horbury locations, featured in the 1975 Yorkshire television adaptation of Joby, written by Horbury author Stan Barstow. Across the road is the cherry tree, which dates from 1887. Canon Sharp opposed the original licence because of its proximity to the church, but he was unsuccessful. Next door is Horbury Hall. It was built for Ralph Amyas, the Deputy Steward of the Manor of Wakefield, and has been dated to 1474 using dendrochronology, or tree ring dating to you and me. It used to be a larger property with wings on either side. It's Grade 1 listed and is undergoing a restoration project. In the past, it's been everything from a butcher's to an undertaker's. Walking along Church Street, we pass School Yard, the entrance to the original St Peter's School. Across the road was remodelled in the 1950s, with a hodgepodge of old houses and shops being demolished to make way for the bungalows. Hill stands the imposing King's Arms, dating from 1834. Like many pubs in the 19th century, it would have held coroners' inquests. To the rear of the pub were weaving sheds, long since turned into houses, and tenterfields where the cloth would be stretched. There are many theories about the name Twitch Hill, witches and hanging come into most of them, but it's more likely that it was just the road between Horbury and Horbury Bridge, the word Twitchel meaning a narrow passage between walls and hedges. Reaching the bottom of the hill, the building across the road has had many incarnations. Built about 1856 by William Thicket for William Brooke, a painter and decorator, it was partly used as a confectioner's by his son between 1885 and 1907, named Brooks's Refreshment Rooms. From 1872 to 78, part of the building was occupied by the post office. Samuel Hall was the postmaster. The front part of the building was the Wakefield and Barnsley Bank, which moved to new premises at Highfield Road in about 1910. Since then it has been Riley's Drapery, Pullen and Son Bowling Balls, a Bookies, Alderson's Stationers and Jack in a Box Toys, to name but a few. Let's head off down Cluntergate, which may have got its name from the word clattergate, the sound of clogs on cobbles, or from clunter meaning clod of earth and gate being a Danish word for street. Cricketers Arms dates from 1898 and is a typical late Victorian red brick building. It was owned by Melbourne Breweries until 1960 and the connection has been retained by the bowing courtier in the signage and windows. The Cluntergate Centre underwent an extensive programme of remodelling in 2018. This building replaced Greenfield House, which was leased from Mr Oldroyd for use as the Trades and Labour Club and Institute, which began in 1914. When the house was demolished, the new building housed a renamed Trades and Friendly Club. This eventually became Horbury Community Centre and was saved from permanent closure in 2015 by Horbury Community Centre Trust. The Shepherd's Arms dates from the 16th century and used to be called Nether Hall. Inside there's evidence of a smaller timber-framed building that was incorporated into the structure. It also had a plaster ceiling dated 1593. Next door is Horbury Working Members Club, or Hall Croft as it was originally known. This was the home of John Schofield, a solicitor, and was a large house and 8 acres of land. When it became available for rent in 1899, it became the new home of Horbury Working Men's Club. Back at the top of Cluntergate, the High Street begins, or Lidgett Gate, or Lydgate as it was formerly known. Starting here at number 2, this was the home of Henry Fallis, local mason and master builder. Henry Fallis and Son were responsible for some of the finest buildings in Horbury, namely the Town Hall, the Library and the United Methodist Free Church, which we'll see later. The buildings set back over there date from 1637 and renowned architect John Carr is reputed to have been born in a cottage around here. The old council offices used to be located here. Queen Street, or Widgery Lane and Hodge Lane as it was formerly known, was renamed in honour of Queen Victoria. The shop here was once Alfred Radley Briggs' chemist and druggist, and then Blundell's grocery. The little shop here was once an archway, which was the only entrance to the rear of the Woolpack Inn. which is now Boons and dates back over 165 years. The Red Box Gallery is a K6 telephone box and was bought by Horbury Civic Society from BT in 2018 for the grant sum of £1. Commissions are made every 3 months from artists who work with a local business or organisation. This old shop building here is all that remains of an old run of shops. This for many years was Bradley's Butchers. The Methodist church that stands on this site today opened in 2016, but it replaced an earlier Wesleyan chapel, St Paul's, that opened in 1884 and was demolished in 2012 due to structural difficulties. In turn, St Paul's also replaced an earlier chapel on the same site, which was completed in 1846 and, like its successor, had to be demolished for structural reasons after only 37 years. The present chapel has been constructed to incorporate the old schoolroom at the rear. This building was actually built by the Primitive Methodists in 1906. They had a chapel next door, which first opened in 1841 and was replaced by a larger chapel in 1875, which was demolished in 1964. The Georgian-style Lydgate Manor, for many years it was a doctor's surgery. It's recently undergone extensive and sympathetic renovations. Isn't it stunning? Lydgate Cottage is also Georgian and dates from 1750. The former United Methodist Free Church was built in 1899 by Henry Fallis and replaced an earlier chapel, which I referred to in Queen Street. This handsome building was built in 1910 by United Counties Bank, which took over from the Wakefield and Barnsley Bank. Most people will remember it, of course, as Barclays Bank. Manor Road used to be called Swamp Road. Entering the old council yard, we find Horbury's latest Grade 2 listed structure. Not one of those, but this. Constructed in 1939, this is a civilian decontamination chamber and was granted listed status in 2019, as Historic England regard it as one of the finest examples of its kind. The land that the Town Hall and Library is built on was purchased by Horbury Urban District Council in 1899 from Messrs Baines for 3 shillings and threepence a yard. Then Henry Fallis, remember him, was hired to clear the land of a house and garden and then begin construction work on the Town Hall. At 3 p.m. on the 30th of July 1902, a grant ceremony was held at which all the local dignitaries witnessed Councillor Joshua Harrop, chairman of the council, lay the foundation stone. The opening ceremony took place on the 2nd of October 1903, after which Councillor Harrop hosted a luncheon for 200 guests in the Co-op Hall. In 1904, Horbury Urban District Council applied for permission to build a new library next to the Town Hall. A grant was secured from the Carnegie Foundation, with the rest being raised locally. The foundation stone was laid by Councillor Arthur Horsfield on the 4th of January 1905. On the 14th of February 1906, Councillor Horsfield was back to oversee the grand opening. Andrew Carnegie of Carnegie Hall fame endowed 2,509 public libraries throughout the English-speaking world. At the top of Hargreaves Yard are the Penny Ginnels, so called because they lead to the Old Penitentiary, or House of Mercy. of Mercy was founded in 1858 in a cottage in Millfield Road at Horbury Junction. It was the idea of Miss Henrietta Louisa Farrer, a cousin of Canon John Sharp, and with his help and local influence, a home soon started for the reception and protection of women who had led unchaste lives. It was so successful that larger premises were needed, and in 1862 the foundation stone was laid for this beautiful building. Designed by Henry Woodier, the first section opened in 1864, with the chapel being dedicated in 1871 and the east wing being completed in 1884. The House of Mercy became a boarding school for maladjusted children in 1950. The Sisters of St Peter, who ran the home, also started a high school and a preparatory school known as St Hilda's. Opposite the House of Mercy is the cemetery, the first burial having been that of 62-year-old Hannah Hemingway on the 19th of July 1862. The council took over the running of the cemetery in 1897 and gradually extended the site. Canon Sharp is buried just over there, in sight of his beloved House of Mercy. Returning via Northgate, this is the old Mount Zion Chapel, or Baptist Chapel as it was known. These pretty cottages, known as St Leonard's Hospital, were built in 1888 as almshouses. The word hospital means charity in this instance. Canon John Sharp had the former Wormall's almshouses demolished in 1887. Right next door is the old lockup or kidcote. Dating from 1710, it was used to house prisoners on a very short-term basis. There was a room upstairs for the constable. The cottages across the road were constructed from the remains of the old Tide Barn, which was a large 4-bayed timber frame structure dating probably from the 15th century. In 1850 it was bought from the church by William Stringer, who converted the eastern bays into 2 cottages. The remainder had many uses over the years, from rag warehouse to greengrocers. Those 2 bays were destroyed by fire in 1904. You can see the remnants from the car park. This car park was in fact originally a burial ground. It was largely disused after 1862 when the cemetery we saw before opened, although I have found a record of a Hargreaves Yard resident being buried here in 1918. The headstones were cleared and the car park created in 1967. Across the road is the Old Town School, which is probably the first school to be founded in Horbury in 1708. In 1832, an extension and the schoolmaster's house were added. It closed as a day school in 1886, but remained as a Sunday school until 1891. For many years, it was chapels printing. This, of course, has just been a snapshot of Horbury's history. Why not come and visit yourself and explore? There's so much more to discover.